Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. This episode is part of our Bookseller Lightning Talk series, in which booksellers present short talks on tech tools, organizational strategies, communication methods, or innovations they've made in their stores. Next up, we're going to have Preet from Eagle Eye Bookshop talking to us about Bookfest planning and logistics. So Preet, I'm going to go ahead and spotlight you and take it away.
Hi, everybody. You're going to get a quick look at my inbox. I had my slide up and then decided to go back to my email because I like to clear out things almost immediately. I would also like to let you know that while I practice this and prepared this, I might go a little bit rogue. My name is Preet. I work at Eagle Eye Bookshop. I am one of the founders and organizers of Love Y'all Book Fest. We are a romance-based book festival. I could not have done this without my two partners, who also are independent booksellers. Vanya Stoyanova works at Ravenkind, which is a children's bookstore here in Decatur, Georgia. And Hannah Teachout works at Bookish Atlanta. And we are essentially the first romance, event planned by independent booksellers. All of our programming and community involvement was kept in mind with the fact that we would have independent bookstores be the key center point. We had 4 independent bookstores selling books. We had about 500 attendees, just under that number, and we had about 65 authors. And as I, bring the slides up, you will be able to see kind of what the agenda is. But because our book festival, we actually planned it pretty quickly. I will talk in particular what worked for our festival and what we kept in mind, keeping in mind that we are independent booksellers, and the fact that in my case, I have been traveling around the country, I want to say for almost 20 plus years, getting my community for romance events and meeting romance authors. And that was probably one of the key goals in starting this festival. So essentially this meeting grew, this festival grew out of a meeting held with other booksellers in January last year, where we got together to talk about what was happening in our stores. And it was hey, I love romance. And Vanya was I love romance. And Read It Again Books, which is a little further out, was I love romance. And so we were let's do this. But you really want to, when starting a festival, keep in mind why you're starting this. What are you hoping to accomplish? Are you looking for this to be one day or two? Would you like your event to be free? Would you like your event to be ticketed? We knew that with how popular romance is and the fact that there is a vacuum for romance events in Atlanta, publishers don't really send authors here. Most of us do have to travel to get our fix, per se, that it would be extremely popular, and having an event that was free would kind of be next to impossible to manage. So we had paid tickets and we had tiers. Once you have those basic questions answered, you can move forward. Once you've decided that you're doing a festival, you really want to keep in mind where you'll be having this. Georgia weather is extremely unpredictable. It can be hot, it can be cold, you can have, it's kind of like Texas, you can have all 4 seasons in one day. We knew that we wanted to do this in February, kind of around Valentine's Day. We are called Love Y'all, so we thought that was the perfect time to do it. Knowing that in February it could be sunny and warm or cold and wet, we knew that we wanted to do it inside. That way we didn't have to deal with the vagaries of weather. We also learned while we were planning that an indoor festival is a little bit easier because if you do something outdoors, you have to deal with permits. There's a lot more involved. And as we were starting from scratch, we didn't have any money in the bank to kind of be able to pay for permits. And so we went with going indoors. You also need to think about how many people you would like to have or will be able to accommodate. So you also need to think about seating, vendors, your authors, registration, where you will have your bookstore, how much space you will need. You also need to think about accessibility. You want to make sure that anybody who is wanting to come will be able to have access. For me, parking is a huge cause of anxiety. It is often the main reason that I don't go places because I don't know what the parking situation is like. So that's also something that you want to think about. Will people have access to easy street parking, or will there be paid parking available? All right, author lineup. This is very, very key. Now, we are in Atlanta. We are blessed to have a lot of very talented and nationally renowned authors on hand, and connections with them through our individual bookstores and just, like being out about, being readers. And so when we came up with this plan for this book festival, we reached out to some of those authors before we had even made a formal announcement and like our pre-planning stages. And they were very enthusiastic about wanting to come on board. And even before we had, say, like an author interest forum, we had quickly outgrown our initial space. Our initial plan had been to partner with our local public library system. The Decatur branch is quite large, and they do have, like an auditorium and other rooms that we were going to plan to use. But I want to say, even before we formally launched, we had outgrown the space, which necessitated looking off-site. And they in turn reached out to their friends to say, hey, this festival is happening. Would you be interested? And we started getting messages on Instagram, personal, like work email accounts. Hey, I'd like to be involved. How do I do this? Now, you can easily fill up a panel, your schedule with live near you who aren't able to travel on their own. You need to think about how many you can accommodate. You need to think about if you will be able to contribute at all to their travel or hotel stay. Sometimes publishers or authors will ask for honorariums. We were able to finance flights for 2 authors who were BIPOC, who would not have been able to attend otherwise, and we really wanted them to come. This year, we are doing the festival again in February of 2025, and we are hoping to, increase the number of authors that we can support by bringing in. And you definitely want to take advantage of authors you have personal relationships with to invite them. Sometimes, it could be that, hey, like you are really familiar with them and, like you love them, but they may not have, like a book coming out or the last book that they had come out may have come out a while ago. You might want to ask them to be a moderator because you always need those. And then definitely recommend putting up author interest forms on your website and your social media. Partners. This was extremely key for us. We reached out to our city council, to the Decatur City Council, before things got really far ahead into planning because we wanted to make them aware of what we wanted to do and why. And they were really instrumental in us putting on the festival. They gave us suggestions on spaces. They gave us suggestions on businesses to reach out to. They really, really put their mouth where their money is. They helped us with like welcome bags and all sorts of things. Like, honestly, they were probably one of our best partners beyond the bookstores. Our festival had something unique that I have not seen at many, where beyond the panels and the signings, we had experiences on Friday where we, at no extra cost to authors, provided like events around the city sort of, but they were less like book related and more about having authors interact with readers in small groups. And that turned out to be a great success. Authors didn't have to pay anything to participate, and it felt very intimate and very cool. And we got a lot of great feedback on that. This, I guess, also ties into like your author lineup. You definitely want to reach out to your local reps, let them know that you're doing this event. They might be able to reach out to, like their marketing departments, their publicity departments, get you in touch with them so that you can get some help in getting authors to your lineup. Connecting with publishers is also key. We weren't able to secure necessarily sponsorships from them, but they were willing to send galleys, which we were able to do as like drops, which people were very excited about. We were sent tote bags, which we were delighted to hand out to attendees at registration, and vendors. Everybody is surrounded by very talented people in their cities. You might have their stuff as your sidelines. There might be people at markets that you see. And, we did have a decent amount of vendors. We had a great selection, actually. And we did charge a table fee for our vendors, but it was, like not as much considered to what I've seen other festivals charging. And that is another source of income and revenue. Let's see here. Marketing. This is not my strong suit. This is definitely Vanya's strong suit. She created beautiful graphics. She created our logo. The program that we had was, I wish I had a copy on hand to show you. Beautiful. Just authors, like the covers, it had like the schedule, it had like local businesses in it. Just unbelievable. And also like branding for the social media that we have for our Instagram. All these things that you see on the screen are some of the things that we did. Just marketing is important. We did pay for ads on Facebook, and those did help because like I said, we started out from scratch. Scheduling. This was a lot of fun, and also probably what we struggled with the most, because the three of us got together and we did it in person, and there were so many things that we needed to keep in mind. And even with having so many eyes on it, when we published our schedule, there were still mistakes. But you want to make sure that you have this done as soon as possible, just because, especially if people are coming to you for the first time, oftentimes people will travel to meet the authors that you have because they love them. Half book will travel. This is like half author will travel. And so you want to make sure that people know like what time and where, and you definitely need to be considerate of how far people might be coming from. And, like they might need to get on the road to leave early. All of these things are really important to keep in mind. You also want to make sure that you have your authors evenly on your schedule where it's kind of balanced. And if I'm going too fast, please let me know. This was really, really important to us because the tagline for our book festival is "Love Y'all, Love is for Everyone." We wanted to make sure that our festival lineup represented the readership, the people who shop in our stores, the authors who write it, just everybody. So we were very, very careful. We wanted our panels to also reflect, regardless of the genre, everybody. So you definitely need to make sure that you pay close attention to this. It is very easy to kind of, as you're scheduling things, to overlook it. And I want to commend Hannah for this, because Hannah was on top of us to make sure that we didn't go in either one direction or the other, and that the distribution of authors was equitable. You also want to make sure that, because festivals can get a little overwhelming, like in our case, we had everything contained in like one space. Everything was indoors and it wasn't too far apart from each other. You want to make sure that you have a separate area for authors to be able to compose themselves and prepare themselves. You also want to make sure that you have an area on hand close by where attendees who may be attending their first festival might get overwhelmed or might need some space to get themselves together or to organize. You want to make sure that you have those available. And you also want to make sure you have easy access for those who might need extra time getting from one place to the other, who might have, like aids, anybody who might have difficulty in any way. You want to make sure that you are prepared for them and that you have plans in place. Most people are very kind and gracious and will let you know when they purchase tickets that they might need some help. You definitely want to make sure that you have access to those sort of things. Safety. There was a festival recently, a couple of weeks ago, where this really became clear that it was an issue. It was a female-dominated attendance event, and they had some people who, just infiltrated, crashed, and some of the attendees were assaulted. And so you want to make sure that you do have security on hand, that your spaces are secure, that everybody feels safe there. In cases of health emergency, you want to know where the nearest medical facilities are, and you definitely want to keep a first aid kit on hand, maybe multiple, depending on how large your space is. And volunteers. You cannot put on a festival without volunteers. As bookstores, you have customers who are great, who you have access to them. Definitely get them involved. You need a lot of them because they will help your festival run smoothly. And this is feedback that we got when we asked them on how their experience was, especially the short shifts and give breaks in between. We offered discounted tickets for 8 hours of volunteering over 2 days. It didn't have to be on the same day. And the feedback that we got was short shifts and definitely more breaks. You want to make sure that you can have volunteers, like anybody can volunteer, but you want to make sure that you assign them shifts based on what they can do, and keeping in mind any ability issues that they might have. This was key. We had somebody volunteer to be our volunteer coordinator. She had volunteered at other events before. She created a binder. We had advanced training sessions just so that people would know what to expect from their roles, and also who to go to if they had any questions or concerns. They always knew that they could come to myself or Hannah or Vanya, but that Allison, our volunteer coordinator, was the first person to go to. Like I said, we did offer discounted tickets for anybody who volunteered. There are other perks that can be given, like early entry, to signing sessions, something that, we will, or discounts on merch. We are talking about what to do as volunteer perks this time around. I don't think that we will be charging our volunteers for tickets. And I will say this, we had the best batch of volunteers. So many of them went above and beyond. They worked longer than they needed to. They were excited to be there. They were a very integral part of our success. And thank you so much for your time. There's actually a lot more that I could talk about that I probably left off. My email address is on the screen, as is our logo, as is our website. We haven't updated it for 2025 yet, but you are more than welcome to go and take a look and see what we had on there. If you are planning a festival, I wish you the best of success. And once again, please feel free to reach out and I will do my best to help you in your endeavors. This was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work. And I will definitely say that the 4 bookstores that we had sell books, all 4 of them want to come back next year. We had initially reached out to more than 4, but only 4 of them were available that weekend. And as a romance reader and lover, and like I said, as somebody who's traveled to romance events before and knows how crazy and wonderful these can be, all of the bookstores were so blown away by the turnout and the love that people have. Panels are probably like the best thing because you introduce authors to readers who might not be familiar with them, and you end up making like these fantastic connections that oftentimes, like, I don't know, like I obviously love it a lot, but yeah, you just make these connections that can really end up being really meaningful. But thank you so much for your time. I apologize for any bumbling I may have done, and thank you once again.
Thank you for listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA website at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!